Son of a bitch. Hold on, let's check that person.
Oh, he's leaving. He's leaving. He's back. All right, hey.
I missed.
Everybody, welcome to tonight's late night happy hour. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky, joined tonight by comedian Mike Mulloy from Faded Comedy LA. Go over to fadedcomedy.com. Right? We have a banner for it if I got it wrong. Just in case.
You got it.
And they do all kinds of fun stuff, or at least did before the pandemic.
We're still trying.
Yeah.
We got to redefine what fun is, but
yeah. I do want to put up this disclaimer. I just have to find it because there's going to be some language. A lot, probably more than normal. Just wanted to let you know if you're sensitive to that kind of thing. If the kids are listening, which they shouldn't be, just be prepared. Mike, how are you? Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
I'm doing good. I hope I don't scare him off cursing like a rowdy orphan boy, but that's just how I am. That's just how I'm built. Those
are the best kind.
So we wanted to congratulate you, by the way. You are fresh out of Twitter jail.
I'm not. I got another day in the clink, apparently. I thought I was out today, and apparently it's tomorrow.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Because before it was difficult to even double check that we were following you on Twitter. So that's why I thought you were out.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just in jail. Like, I'm not on death row like I've been before. Like before, they're just like, you're donezo, your tweets are gone, nobody can read them. But now I can DM people. I can't send videos for some reason now. I don't know.
Well, you know, like you're in a halfway house right now. You're not out. You're not like completely removed from the system, but you're not inside.
They got me on weekends. I can leave the jail. Basically,
just if you could just.
I'm the Willie Horton of Twitter now, which is a deep cut Boston reference.
Yeah,
which I only know because of like King of the Hill, which is weird.
Well, see, now Andy, we were alive when that actually happened. Like we saw the impact of Willie Horton on an actual political campaign.
That is rough, man.
I don't even remember what goddamn year it was. Was it like
that? Was it was
88?
Yeah, that was the.
Yeah, so I was 3. I probably didn't remember.
You're lucky.
I was watching like Huey Herman, but he didn't cover that. It was mostly him just talking to a fucking chair.
That had its own cherry. So can you do you regret at this point
everything I've ever done up until fucking this moment? Yeah.
Give this moment time too.
Right. No, we just started. Do you regret then, now that you are in Twitter jail, starting, the insurrection, storming the Capitol? Do you have regrets about these things? Because that's, as far as I know, that is the only reason people get banned from Twitter.
Actually, that was the last time that I got locked up. So this time I got locked up for 7 days. The last time I got locked up for a day because of that.
What did you do? First of all, wait, back up for a second. What did you do that got you locked into Twitter jail for
the most recent
time? I threatened Keith Old Birdman.
I didn't even Keith Olbermann, a former the former Sports Center guy.
Yeah, Keith Old Birdman was being a fucking jerk on Twitter, and he's like, oh, people from Texas are idiots and they should die and not get the vaccine. And I was like, hey, somebody should probably beat your ass, which isn't a threat.
It's actually not a threat.
It's even like, I hope somebody beats your ass. Somebody should. Will it be me? It's who's to say? It might be. But I'm not going to say that it is, but I'm not going to say that it's not.
Well, the way I felt about it, because I saw that tweet that he sent out, which was essentially after Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, lifted the mandatory mask mandate. Keith Olbermann reacted by saying, if Texas is now on the side of the virus, why are we going to be bothering vaccinating them? Which is obviously an incredibly stupid statement on his part. The way I feel about it, though, in terms of your tweet, I would not advocate violence towards him because I just wouldn't advocate violence, period. That being said, if I heard that some Texan clocked Keith Olbermann over that tweet, my reaction would be, I get it. I'm not saying I approve of it, but I get it.
Violence to an extent. Like, is punching somebody in the forehead violence? Sure. But like, there's a difference between punching somebody in the forehead to smart them or like to hurt them. And like, I'm not saying he needs to be hurt. I'm just saying he needs to like
an
get
ear
punched
flick
in the head.
like
Hey dummy, fucking just a reboot. Like just blow on the cartridge. What are you doing? But as far as regret, no, I don't regret it. I would do it again. I will do it again. I will never
actually specifically ask people to punch Keith Olbermann, or just do something that's going to get you thrown in Twitter jail again.
I mean, probably both. I'll probably like. I'm not gonna not tell your like. I'm not gonna not tell your listeners to not punch Keith Olbermann. I'm not gonna tell them to either. That's up to them. I'm gonna give them the information and make that decision. If you at home want to punch Keith Olbermann, that's your business. I have nothing.
It's a very libertarian approach to this.
Which, oh God, oh no, don't ever compare me to those fuckheads. Oh, they're the worst. Oh, God. I love how those guys will just fucking. I'm not wasted.
That's what I was about to say. I don't even think
this is all I'm having is a goddamn Red Bull. I haven't had a drop of alcohol. I'm good.
Take that, Cameron Porter.
I'm just trying to wake up, Cameron. God damn. It was 7 o'clock. I was watching some King of the Hill. I was like, God damn, I gotta wake up, don't I?
So, you know what's funny?
I guess he's gone now. He doesn't like you. Maybe he likes Keith.
I'm out. This guy's a dick. All right, Cameron, get out of here then. Don't ever come back. Tell him he's not welcome back.
No, he's a regular. He's welcome back.
He's welcome back.
Cameron,
but like, here's the thing. Like,
I'll get better. He'll be fine.
I have a sneaking suspicion that we are all relatively at least on the same, red or blue side of the spectrum. Like when Keith Olbermann spouts off and says that all Texans should, not get vaccinated and die of COVID, he makes us all look bad. Knock that shit off.
And like, we have enough like people to yell at. Like I don't feel like turning to the guys I'm supposed to be lined up alongside.
Right, exactly.
And being like, hey, could you also, I know we're charging at these guys who have knives. Could you also not stab me while we're running up there? Can you just like not run with your knives pointing to the sides? Just stab forward.
Go ahead, Eddie.
I was going to say though, like in thinking about what's happened to you, because you've explained that you've been suspended from Twitter, kicked off in Twitter jail multiple times. Clearly the system isn't working. You're just a repeat offender. Yeah, you're a recidivist. You're getting shuffled through all the time. But I got to be honest, a week where I cannot get inside Twitter at all sounds amazing. Like I feel like if they really want to punish you, they should make you tweet all the time. Like you can never stop tweeting. Like you have to look at Twitter all the time. Like you're basically this, like just staring at Twitter 24/7. Like every time you send a tweet, they make you tweet something else for like a week. Like you cannot get away. That feels like a more effective way to get people in line.
That has been every day of my last 5 years in Los Angeles anyways, though. Like the only way I get fucking anybody to notice me is if I tweet nonstop. So that's my hell is my reality, and my reality is my hell.
So sign spinning hasn't been working for you?
No, not at all.
Do you like what you said? You got banned completely? How did you get banned completely and then get back?
I don't remember what I did. I don't even remember. So the thing that I did it was funny that you brought up the insurrection. The day of the insurrection, I did get suspended for a day. At least I know it's not. Yeah, it's a low bar to hurdle.
Well played, Kevin L.
Thank you for the
that's actually a pretty good line. You should keep that.
But the day of the insurrection, when that lady got shot, I said that lady broke into the Capitol and got to meet Ronald Reagan the same day, and everybody got very mad at me and like searched anything that they could find to try to and just reported all of my tweets. They were just like, you can't make fun of that lady dying. And I was just like, can't I?
I mean, I could see why people might be a little offended by that. But can you? I mean, this is one of those comedian things that you probably run up against all the time. Can you and should you?
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Don't break into a federal building. It is a lot easier pitch to make than like don't sell cigarettes on the street. which I've seen a lot of people advocate for people to die for. So especially on Twitter.
Actually, though, you raise a point, though, that I always think is really interesting with comedy. The idea, because like I generally feel like, that the idea of like anything being off limits or like, anything being like a third rail. Like I pretty much believe that if you are capable of making a joke that crosses boundaries in a way that is elevated and smart, if you can pull it off, more power to you, because there is supposed to be an element of pushing boundaries. That being said, it is extremely difficult to do the more, really touchy stuff that you get into. And I feel like a lot of comics, frankly, a lot of writers, a lot of whatever, can't pull it off. And what I think is always interesting is the comics that basically try to go there, but seem like they're more interested in going there for the sake of going there, as opposed to what they're actually trying to do while they're there. And that's what I always, because you'll see comics get very defensive about reactions to crossing certain boundaries. But, not every time, but more often than not, I think that reaction comes more with how they told the joke as opposed to telling the joke at all.
Yeah, and I think you got to also consider the fact that like 90%, 80% of everybody that does anything is probably shit at it. Like, think of how many writers there are out there. 80% of them are probably shit. 20% are probably really good, and and of that 20%, there's a really elite class. Are there topics that are really hard to talk about? Yeah, there are. And would I leave those to people with better understandings of them, or better people that have better educated themselves about those topics? Absolutely. I think there's comics that are when they go into those topics, they might be more concerned with like you said, a reaction, as opposed to like an actual understanding of the topic. I one of my best friends and a comedian that I open for when he's here in the States is this comedian Daniel Sloss. He's big in the UK, and he's got a bunch of specials on Netflix, and he has a lot of the UK style is very it's an hour. It's usually an hour, and in that hour, it's usually covering one overarching topic. It's very different from American stand-up. It's more storytelling, but with jokes sprinkled in. It's I watch him do this, and I'm just like, gee, I can never fathom. It's like watching, the same way that you watch like a LeBron James play basketball. You're just like, I know we do the same thing, but I could never do what that fucking guy does. So, he can cover topics. Like, I've watched him cover topics about like one of his friends getting sexually assaulted, and it was from a very thoughtful perspective, and he talked to her through this, and like, obviously he had made sure that he had her blessing for this, and like, it was somebody that you guys can all check it out on Netflix, but he says this was somebody that it was a friend of his that also was the person who did this. So it was kind of like tackling that perspective of it. Wow. And like, if it's coming from your own perspective, it's a topic that you can explore a little more closely, because it's, stand-up's supposed to be about you. It's I don't really like stand-up where, I go there and they're talking about like they're on stage talking about like Kim Kardashian. What the fuck does she have to do with you? Right. Who are you? I didn't come here to fucking talk about Kim Kardashian. Who the fuck are you? And I think if there's guys that want to make jokes about things like that, or just topics that are way over their heads, and don't. But then it's not going to stop them. They like the reaction. The reaction is more important than it being good art. If
what do you think are sort of the guidelines? Like, not, I mean, or whatever it is. Like, to like, what are the things that you at least hold to, and you say like, I'm not going to do this? We talked a little bit earlier in the day, like punching down, for example. Like, what are kind of the basic things? Like, I will say what I want to say, I will go where I want to go, but these are the rules that I won't break in the process.
I think my biggest rule is, and it was something that it took a couple of years to figure out, was I want to sound like me on stage, and I want to make sure that nobody would ever confuse my act with somebody else. Like nobody would be like, oh, are you the guy that does that? If somebody's seen me, they know they've seen me. Like I make fucking sure of that. Like from the moment I'm on stage till the moment they leave that club, I make sure that they know who, like they're gonna remember who I am. So I want them to not only fucking like me, I want them to fucking like comedy. I want them to enjoy the fucking experience of live comedy, and I want them to be like, oh, that comedian. Like even if they don't remember my name, if they remember, oh, that comedian, he came and had a drink with us after the show, and he took a picture with us. Oh, it was a good time. I liked live comedy. I want to go to another live comedy show. I enjoyed that experience. I want to keep doing that. If I did like that, that's really the biggest thing for me, is like making sure that I'm like leaving comedy better than I left it.
Where do you think it's at now? Like in terms of the state of it and trying to leave it better than you found it.
I apparently didn't do a great job over the last fucking year. But we'd been building something really, really special here in LA with Faded, and it sucks that it's been exactly a year since the last one was a Friday a year ago. So it was it was one of the most fun things I've been a part of, and it was a really cool community that we created, and it felt really special, and it felt really different than a lot of other stand-up shows that people have said they've been to, and I can't wait to do that again, but I can't in good conscience do it right now.
What was the vibe like in terms of what you guys were looking for with Faded, but before all this stuff happened, and then we'll talk about the ways you guys have adjusted to it for the time being.
I mean, our whole thing was just like funny above all. It was just we don't give a fuck about your credits. We don't give a fuck about what you've been on. We don't give a fuck about any of that. We just, are you funny? Is our audience going to rock with you? Is our audience going to want to see, like, follow what you're doing after? Because that's a big part of what we did also, was like, we want to make sure that we're putting people over. Like if our friends are getting, like, if they're on TV, like we're going to fucking tell everybody. If they've got a project coming, we want to tell people, because it's not just like to be like, oh, these people, like, I'm not going to fucking pretend that these people got these things because they did Faded. That's ridiculous. I want to make sure people know that we've got an eye for this shit. We know who's good and who's like coming up, but like we're genuinely happy for those people. Like I'm every time that like one of the comics that we've booked on that show goes on to do something, I'm just like, fuck yeah, because we don't book people that we don't fucking like. And I get people, I have my civilian friends reach out to me all the time being like, hey, this comedian hit me up on Tinder, and he's my civilian friends. Yeah. But like, they're just like, hey, this comedian fucking hit me up on Tinder and he's an asshole. And I was just like, we'd never book that guy in a million years. I would never let him around my people anyway. And I'm not surprised that he was a dickhead to you. So it's just, we try to keep our sheet clean in that respect.
Well, and that's really important. I mean, beyond just the basic humanity of it, when you look at what's been going on in comedy in general, and like a lot of the reckoning that's come with the environment that's gone on in the world of comedy, particularly towards women or marginalized people in general, like that's important, because it's at some point you have to try to turn that atmosphere around.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, I know I have a lot of friends that work in sports media that have, their industry's gone through the same thing, and sports that have gone through the same thing. And I have friends that are pro wrestlers that at the exact same time that comedy was going through like that whole, Chris D'Elia and getting all those guys the fuck out of there. Their business was being turned upside down with like, shining a light on these fucking sex pests and getting them the fuck out of here. Like there's no place for that. I don't understand these like people that are like, oh, Louis C.K., he should be allowed. No, he fucking like jerked off. He cornered two of his coworkers and jerked off at them. If you guys did that to your coworkers, you wouldn't be coworkers anymore. Like, that's just fucking the real world. And we need to make the world more real for these people, I think.
Especially too, in his case, from a position of power. Like it's beyond just the act. It's the context of the act as well.
Yeah, because I mean, he could have been the fucking janitor at the comedy club, and you still can't jerk off at people. But like, also, you're like somebody that's considered a gatekeeper in that industry, and it's yeah, you know, yeah. What can you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's one thing that I think is going to be, you know, interesting is like, what are you looking forward to just in terms of like when everybody can go back to, like, you know, what kinds of stuff are you interested in talking about and kind of, you know, making funny again and telling jokes about, like, what kind of stuff are you looking at?
Honestly, I don't even know. Like, I haven't even really started to wrap my brain around the idea of actually being on stage. I think the first month I'm going to focus on just the producing side of things. Cause like I have a couple co-hosts and I have a couple co-producers, but like I try to make sure everything's my first focus is like to make sure the show goes perfectly. Like the stand-up comes after, but like I want to make sure the show goes right. Cause that's my job first and foremost. Because usually there's enough comedians around anyways that like if there's other shit that I need to focus on, I know that there's somebody that can do a bulletproof job in my place. So it's just producing a show and being able to like be around that energy. That energy is just something I can't explain, especially like the way that we had it at Faded. It was just like we were really fucking hitting our stride, and it was starting to be something that like I was really proud of, and it was really building a really cool community. There's a lot of people that like became friends at Faded, like came to Faded solo just because they heard it was cool, and like met people that they still like hang out with during quarantine, or like, you know, call during quarantine. It's just like, wow, like that's so, like, that blows my mind to just like think about that. Like that was something that we helped create. And like we had people flying in. Because they were just like, we're coming to see Faded. We want to see Faded. We want to see what this is about. We're staying an extra couple of days because we're in LA and we want to make sure that we're there on a Friday. So it was just something that we were so proud of. And, you know, especially for when we found people were flying in, we were just like, we'd made the biggest deal out of it for them. Because like, we know they're
it's like if I fly to your wedding, like I expect you to acknowledge that. Like I got on an airplane, I flew to your wedding. Make it production. But
it's just like being excited about the fact that anybody's excited about what you're doing. Like I remember one of the big things that like for me when we started the show was there was this pizza place down the street from the original spot that we were at. And anytime that I went in there, like I just get maybe like a slice, 2 slices, whatever. But this dude treated me like I was spending a fucking $100 in the place. Like I'd just be waiting for 2 slices. He's like, you want a beer on the house? Fucking have a beer. I was just like, God damn. Like and you know what? Every Friday, that's where I came and I spent my money because I remembered the way that guy fucking made me feel every fucking, every time I bought 2 slices of pizza, I left 4 slices of pizza's worth of money because it made me feel good. I like to feel good, and I want to give.
Eventually, I started actually ordering much, much, much more because he was only charging me
a tiny bit. Mark.
Right. I started ordering $200 or $300 worth of pizza every time because he still only would charge me for 2 slices.
Because it worked, but it's just. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say you are an NBA guy. What we had a friend of ours on our podcast, which you can actually go down and the Land O'Lakers podcast, I believe podcast network.
You got Haley on Friday. She's a pal of the show as well.
Oh yeah. So we had this debate last night about how much people are actually enjoying this NBA season. Because it's different, like people like us who do this for a living versus people like you who just watch it because you like, in theory, you like the NBA. Yeah. Have you enjoyed the 2020-2021 NBA season?
Compared to what? Compared to
your
every
week
other
in Twitter jail?
compared to every other minute that I'm awake during the pandemic, yes, it is a massive improvement. Compared to many other seasons, no, I feel racked with guilt every time I watch this. And I watch this all goddamn day because there's no other relief. There's no other good feel that I get. So I wake up and I see what sports are on, and I go from there. And my joy is dictated strictly based on how those numbers end up.
What in particular? I mean, I understand that, or at least I assume the context of the pandemic adding to that guilt. But what specifically makes you feel guilty about it? Like, do you feel like your enjoyment of it pressures them to be playing? Like is it dirty to even be watching this?
It's not even my enjoyment; it's my participation. The fact that I'm watching it is, whether directly or indirectly, giving the NBA a reason to continue doing it.
I mean, the guys want to play. I mean, I would too if I made,
sure, but would they get $27 million
if
we all stopped watching and the NBA went, "Oh fuck, maybe this is bad"?
Oh, I think they'd be upset. They'd lose their money. They
don't get their money.
Exactly. So but that's the whole thing. Is just like, how has this lasted a year when people in anybody with any real fucking sway could have put pressure on people. Like Obama calling LeBron and pulling that shit. That fucking irks me. Dog, these guys had a legitimate reason to sit out. And they're like, hey, you guys don't care about black people dying. Let's see if you care about black people not doing their job.
But here's the thing. I this is one of those places where I actually get it. I would want to play if I was one of the. I mean,
yeah, I'd want an escape too. But also, it's
not an escape. It's if I could do something with my body, in my career, that would earn me at worst $1.5 million for doing it for the year, I'd be pissed if that was taken away from me, if it could be done. I mean, I sympathize with these guys wanting to be back on the floor.
Oh, 100%.
You shouldn't feel dirty. My point is, you shouldn't feel dirty. You're helping them.
Yeah, but am I helping them, or am I helping a bunch of fucking billionaires? How much am I, or comparatively, how much am I helping them versus? Well, 30 fucking fat cats.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing, though. I guess both sports, and if you want to look at this more, overarching society, or the way sort of our system is set up, those things can't really be disentangled. But
there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. I get it.
But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from in the sense that the capitalism that first and foremost is prompting the league to want to play, regardless of how much the players themselves actually want to, that capitalism is driving it from a league's perspective, but they don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. You can be funding the league's coffers while still enabling the players to be doing something that they genuinely want to do for a bunch of reasons, which include getting paid. You know what I mean? There is the love of the game. There's also the love of the money. I can understand, though, what you mean in terms of just the idea that this setup is what makes skipping a year feel like that's untenable.
Yeah.
So
even if everybody wants.
I get these guys want to play basketball. You know what I wanted to do fucking stand up. You know why I didn't? Because it's fucking danger to myself and to others to fucking do that, and it's selfish. It's selfish for me to go out and do stand-up.
Do you think, though, if there had been something like the equivalent of an NBA bubble for stand-up, and I mean, I know it's not apples to apples, but I mean,
they wouldn't have invited my ass. I tell you that much. Fucking the kid would have been sent. They would have sent to the kid the comedy NIT.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what ring of hell it sounds like to be trapped in a bubble with nothing but stand-ups, but it's got to be one of them. Like I love you guys, and I enjoy like live comedy, and I respect the hell out of what you do. The idea of spending 8 weeks or whatever, 10 weeks in a bubble with nothing but 75 comedians sounds awful.
That does sound bad. I think festivals are bad. Like that's 4-day weekends enough. That's the most any group of comedians should be put in.
It's similar to like how long. It's similar to how long I think you can stay in Vegas. Like I feel like 96 hours is the longest anybody should ever be in Vegas straight. Like including the residents. Like the actual residents of Vegas should once every 4 days get out of town for 24 hours and come back, start the clock again.
You gotta, it should be like nursing. 4 days off, 4 days off. You gotta stay the hell out.
Yeah, I remember one time I for work, I don't remember what it was, but I get sent to Vegas for like 96 hours. I seriously was like, I am going to kill myself if I don't leave. I love tables. I love gambling. I was like, if I hear that damn slot machine music one more time.
See, I'm not a guy like I watch enough sports that people assume that I gamble, and I don't have an interest in it. I can watch sports and not have to have a betting interest in it. But like, and I hate Vegas. I hate it. But like now I'm just like 3 days in Vegas sounds fantastic. I can't wait till I'm able like NBA. If Summer League is back, I will be there. I will be a rowdy boy. It'll be fun.
Well, it's supposed to be coming back. That's their hope.
Just in one form or another. But see, like, if you want to feel dirty about something as an NBA fan, I think you can go ahead and feel dirty, like if you watched the All-Star game. But just don't be too. Okay, good. Well, there you go. But like, don't feel dirty if you've been watching the season, because the players want to play the season. They didn't want to play the All-Star game, so by skipping it, that's where you're showing solidarity to the players.
I just feel guilty about everything now. It's just that's the one constant. It's just that I feel bad and I'm mad all the time, and I'm mad at people in power. I'm mad at people with no power who are not fucking doing things either. I'm just mad. It's just a cycle of madness, and I don't know what to do.
No, it's honestly it's a shitty feeling. There's a helplessness that comes with this period, and I feel like this period makes you like compelled to peel back the layers of every onion in a way that really isn't healthy. Like there's a certain amount of willful blindness that like I think we as humans have to have in order to survive. And this period has made that willful blindness very difficult.
Dog, I've had to spend so much time with myself, and that guy is flawed. Fucking problems. Trouble.
All right, so what do you think of your Celtics though this season? It's been a pretty wild one, man.
It's our window isn't yet. It's 1 or 2 years from now. You know, I don't want to be one of these. Like I look at the Celtics, and I'm not one of these panic guys. I understand that this happens at like right before the All-Star game with Celtics teams every year. Like if you look at the way that just Brad coaches, like I've explained this to people before, but like Brad Stevens, like it feels like a lot of times where he's like coaching his own game and not even like trying to win in like January and February. And it's just more about like experimenting with lineups and figuring out what's going to click long term. And I think there's so many people that are just like, let's blow it. Let's trade stuff for Harrison Barnes. And I'm just like, why? Like, I don't want to do like these, like LeBron first run with the Cavs, like half measures. Like, let's trade for let's get a JJ Hickson, or let's get a Carlos Boozer who then leaves. And like, it's just like, all right, we're going to trade him. What was that?
That's just a Carlos Boozer reference. We had Carlos Boozer here for a year. It was fun. Everybody liked Carlos Boozer.
Nobody likes Carlos Boozer. That is so not true.
Yeah,
there are very few athletes that in the history of the NBA have been as widely disliked everywhere they went, like Carlos Boozer.
Yeah, he's just a turd boy. I don't care for him. But like, I don't want to trade Rob Williams. Like, I think Rob Williams is a stud. Like, I said this at the beginning of the season. Like, I think if you look at like where Bam was in his third year and where Robert Williams is, like, I see maybe not bar for bar, but like I see a trend upward. I think Robert Williams, if he stays healthy, like the hip problems worry me. Hips are important to basketball, but that kid's a freak. Like, how do you watch him and not like really enjoy him? Like, very similar to like how I was with like Marcus Smart in the early days, where people are like, "Oh, he's a trade asset." No, that guy's a fucking like dog. Like, that's a guy you want in the fight. Like, how do you not keep that guy around? And that's a guy that like, I see the same shit with Pritchard, and I go, "Oh, that's a guy that his teammates love. Like, his teammates love that dude." And I see the same thing with that kid from the Cavs, Okoro.
Oh, right. Isaac Okoro. Right.
I remember watching the first couple games of the season, or I think it was like just preseason games. And I'm just like, that kid's going to be a stud because of the way that his like teammates are hyped to see him do good. And I see that with Robert Williams. I see that with Pritchard. And I think all their, like, I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, get Pritchard in the All-Star game. Like people do with like Caruso as like a bit. Like, don't be silly, but like, he's a good little role player, and I like him. Like, if I'm going to give minutes to a backup point guard, I'd rather it be him than Jeff Teague.
Let me ask you something. With Boston, it's a city that has a very specific reputation for fandom, and it is not positive. And Brian and I, for example, grew up in St. Louis. We are Cardinal fans. We understand that organization is, by any reasonable standard, very successful, very well run, a lot of tradition, blah, blah, blah. The fans are every bit as obnoxious and self-righteous and insufferable as their reputation. So like both things can be true.
Yeah, and also too, like social media has been really hasn't done the best fans in baseball a lot of service, because they keep kind of pointing out some of the times that Cardinal fans are like kind of racist. So that hasn't reflected really well on them.
I always say this shit with Boston because like, yes, does Boston have a very racist history? Yes. I'd love for anybody to point to a city in the United States or beyond that does not. I think there's a lot of times, especially with Laker fans, where like when Boston's brought up, I've said this before, when Boston's brought up, they turn into to James Baldwin, and then when their city's brought up, they turn into Mark Furman, and it's just like, well, like if you want to go that route, we can go that route. We can bring up every city's fucking racist past, and we can talk about it. Well, are you bringing that up because you have a solution to it, or you just want to bring it up?
Well, I just think it's interesting. I mean, beyond whether or not the accuracy that you think of it, I also think it's interesting just because of the perception when it comes to the actual athletes themselves. Because you hear the athletes talk about experiencing that sort of stuff in Boston more, if nothing else, outwardly than they may have in other cities. But you also wonder how much of that reputation sort of perpetuates itself to where you might feel certain things a certain way in Boston that you might not other places.
And I think obviously part of that might be, they probably experience racism everywhere, but they probably didn't think that it was going to happen in the city that they were putting on the front of their chest. That's pretty a reasonable like thought to have. If like, at least the people I do good for aren't going to be racist to me. And then, to have that happen, it's obviously probably disappointing to say the least. But yeah, I mean, that's also why I think somebody like a Jaylen Brown is so important. And, people are like, oh, trade, a couple of years ago, trade him for Jimmy Butler. Fuck you. Don't. No. I was like, people thought I was fucking crazy that I didn't want to trade like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart for Jimmy Butler. He's a great player.
That's a lot. I mean, that was a lot.
No, that's an unreasonable haul.
Even 2 of the 3 is fucking was an expectation 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm glad we didn't do it.
Butler's awfully good. Marcus
really
Smart
good
stuff
really
for Jimmy
good.
Butler.
But it's a collection of the parts, and it's how long those parts can be in place for. And I think, obviously they got him locked in, each of those guys, for a collective 9 years. Like they're there.
So I was just saying, I think you mentioned you've been here like 5 years. Like in your 5 years or whatever, do you find yourself having to cape up for the Celtics more than you otherwise would have, or because you're in LA, or how does this work? Have we been nice to you?
None of us play for these fucking teams. Fucking, we're that's the thing. Anytime somebody's ever tries to be a dick about this, I'm just like, you fucking, are you a child? Calm down. We're all I always am very much the older I get, the more I try to as soon as the game's over, to have less and less of a feeling in regards to it as quickly as possible. Because it's just I can't have this affect my fucking whole mood.
I remember when Brian and I first started covering sports, we were running the Lakers blog for the LA Times, and we had a really active, comment section that in retrospect was probably too active, and was really, it really gave you an insight into fandom that frankly was quite ugly. But I remember we had this one guy who used to talk about how he would basically be in bars looking to pick fights with people over Kobe. He would be looking to say stuff just so somebody would react about Kobe so he could, and I quote, punch that guy in the throat. That was always his thing.
I wish that guy had to tell that story to Kobe Bryant.
That's what we actually said to him. We said, do you think Kobe actually wants you to be doing this? He'd be go away, you psychopath.
Go home, spend time with your family, or fucking talk to a doctor. Talk to a medical professional. You got head problems.
Yeah, we were like, do you actually think if Kobe heard that story, he'd be like, right on, man. Good for you, man. You keep that up.
Thanks for fucking defending me. I needed that.
Yeah, yes. Kobe needs you to be doing that. His little, at this point, I think 4 championship career could use your boost of throat punching.
Throat punching a random
soldiers in the war of Kobe.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick a fight with people so they can maybe say something a little bit sideways about Kobe, so I can accomplish my throat punch. We're like, he's no athlete with any shred of humanity is going to appreciate that.
The older I've gotten, the more I just don't give a fuck about most things. So I've gotten very nihilist about most everything, and I just especially at there's I don't like to scrap anymore, but it's something that I can do when it fucking needs to happen. And there's been times at bars where my friends are loud, they're rowdy, they attract attention, and there's people that just they come up and they're looking for a fight, and I'm just at this point in my life, I'm gonna do anything I can to fucking talk my way out of this. I don't care about looking like a fuck. I just don't care what it looks like. I'm out. No. I'm trying to have a nice night. I really don't give a fuck about looking like a tough guy. I don't have to impress anybody.
Other than people physically, threatening, imminent harm to friends or family. I can't really think of a good reason to get into a fist as an adult to get into a fist fight with another person.
There's been one time in the last 5 years that I've laid hands on somebody, and it's because he punched a woman, and I feel justified.
No, that's a good reason, but unless you're
it was a crazy thing. I was walking to a comedy show, and this guy just on the street hit this woman that he was with, and I was just did you just hit that woman? And he answered yes, because for a second he could have lied to me, and I would have been all right, maybe, but he said yes, and I was just well, I gotta fucking hit you now. It was very
That's a really
strange situation.
It was in front of a Little Caesars. That's what I remember. And I hit him. I hit him with a jab and a straight. And I remember just thinking to myself, I hit him with the old pizza.
Yeah, that's awkward.
That actually is a boxing term. The old pizza.
I've never.
It is not. No, that is not at all a boxing term.
I back in the day, but I never heard that.
All right, so the news story that we ran into that we wanted to run past you as a sort of what do you do? Last week there was a snorkeler in the Florida Keys who, while underwater, came across a black bag wrapped up in tape, and upon undoing the tape, he discovered that inside there were 25 bricks of coke, which ended up 68 pounds worth of coke. He turned it over to the Monroe County Sheriff's Office.
Nerd! What are you doing, nerd? God damn! That's a lot of fucking money.
Yeah, it's according to the U.S. Border Patrol, had a worth of over $1.5 million, which frankly to me felt low for 68 pounds of coke. And apparently, like, this has been happening a lot lately. Like in December, there was a guy that was out fishing, found nearly 75 pounds of coke floating around. There's been 150 pounds of marijuana found, another case of almost 80 pounds of coke. Officials feel that the pandemic has been leaving smugglers with fewer options to transport drugs. The question is,
drop it off in LA water. I'll go fish it out. I've never touched cocaine in my life. I'll find somewhere that somebody that wants it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
No, so if you are a person who's never done coke, you've got any experience with coke, I don't want 70 pounds of it. Like I have no idea what to do with 70 pounds of cocaine other than wait.
I know enough people that I feel like I know enough people that would know what to do with 70 pounds of cocaine. Like I don't know somebody that knows what to do with 70 pounds of cocaine, but I know somebody that would know somebody.
But how do you even start that process? Like, how do you tap somebody on the shoulder without saying, "Hey, I've got 70 pounds of cocaine in my house. I need help getting rid of. Can you help me?" Because you don't want to say that out loud.
I would never. There's nobody that I would ask of that question of that I wouldn't feel was prepared to hear that question. Like I'd be turning to experts.
I have a very specific group of friends.
Yeah, I have friends with a very specific skill set.
Because that's a lot of weight to attempt to move as a truly rank amateur. Like on one hand, obviously the idea of being able to move, $1.5 million worth of blow.
Does it go bad though?
Is the expiration date?
It don't expire. So it's profit. The profit margins of fucking. There's no fucking expense. You got it at fucking zero, so everything you make is pure profit.
All you
gotta do is sell fucking a grand's worth of coke a week. That's not hard.
So assuming there's no expiration date, like it's not milk.
I'm looking at a chat board on the internet, which certainly couldn't be misleading.
Yeah, that's reliable.
Yeah. Cocaine will turn a golden brown over time if not refrigerated. That's one comment.
I'll buy a big, if I got this fucking coke, I'm making an investment. I'll buy a big fridge and I'll keep.
Okay. So that's one.
I'll buy what's the opposite? I'll buy like a walk-in goddamn thing if I need to for that.
When kept dry and out of sunlight, it lasts forever.
Yeah. See, there we go.
Let's see here. For me, the shelf life was about 2 days, but I think that was probably specific to that person. Yeah, I think shelf life. Oh, here we go. This looks comprehensive. Shelf life depends on how many times you are in and out of the bag and how much air and moisture you are letting into the product. The more times you open the bag, the moister and crappier it will get. Seal it, put it in a freezer when you're not using it. And take it out only when you think you need or you're planning your mini Coke binge, and then you're good. So it lasts forever.
We learned a lot.
There's a part of me that would be tempted to sell it at way below cost just to get rid of it. And like you said, Mike, just treat it as pure profit. There's another part of me, though, that would want to become the next Pablo Escobar.
But like, if it's $1.5 million worth of coke and you flip it for $1 million, you got a fucking $1 million off fucking nothing.
Yeah, off just a little bit of snorkeling.
You know.
But I'm with the other guy who took it back in. I know it makes me lame, it makes me a nerd, it makes me a loser, and all that. But there's 0% chance that I don't end up in the jail for 30 years.
Well, if you find that drugs, you call me first, and then you can call the cops. Well,
yeah. I've never done.
We'll call the cops together. We'll call the cops together. I'll give you the number to 911.
I'd be afraid of getting arrested on my way into the police station to turn the drugs in. That
always would be funny if like somebody did get arrested with a bunch of drugs and be like, listen, I found a bunch of drugs. I was on my way to the police station to drop them off. I just want to be
sure
honest.
You were, buddy. Like you get pulled over on the way to the police station for like a tail light. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Oh,
dude, I just came out of the water. I was snorkeling. I found this bag. Okay,
I found this bunch of coke. I was on my way to you guys. You know anything about this?
It is actually a very awkward situation to be a good Samaritan. You have to really drive the speed limit in a car that's up to date at that point.
Yeah,
like maybe
too much trouble.
It is. All right. So before we let you go, we wanted to give you an opportunity to let people know a little bit more about what you guys are doing right now online. You got the shows every Thursday. You guys just did the Faded Spelling Bee with 12 contestants, including Katie Nolan from ESPN, Dragonfly Jones and Megan Gailey, who've been on our show before. That was a lot of juggling you guys did, and it was controversial.
Yeah, we did it. There was a controversial finish. We ended up holding a trial for the winner to see if they won it clean, and they were exonerated, much to my chagrin. He fucking cheated. You can't tell me different. But yeah, we're doing that again on March 20th. He will not be able to cheat this time. So we'll see if he can win it clean. But yeah, we got some new contestants, some good pals, some good surprises. That'll be fun. We're doing that on the 20th. It's a Saturday this time. But yeah, we've been doing the for free. He's free. He's already free. So if you guys fucking did it, yeah, well, no, Katie Nolan can go to hell too for getting him off. She was a bad witness. She was
Katie, Sarah Spain, all those people, they've served as judges on a lot of ESPN shows. It's sort of their role that they fill. So you got to give them a break.
Yeah. Well, she was a very shaky witness and absolutely turned her testimony. So, I love her, but she's good people.
She's not the kind of person you can rely on if you find 60 pounds of cocaine and you swear you're on your way to the police station to turn it in.
Yeah. Well, no, see, that's the thing about me for some reason, and especially Katie likes to do this, is people like negging me. Like, people like to just, like, whatever I say is right, they'll say is wrong just to, like, get a reaction out of me. So that's very much what Katie likes to do sometimes.
Well, according to BJ Dry, you encouraged her to be a bad witness. So it seems like everybody had a role.
She did whatever she wanted to.
Well, yeah, I guess, when you've reached Katie's station in life, you're not going to be told what to do. I mean, that's what are we going
to do? Threaten to not book her again?
Yeah, that'll show her.
You'll never fucking work my drug spelling bee again.
You'll just have to settle for all that ESPN programming that you're doing. I was gonna say the drug spelling bee. So Danny, who's my co-host on the Faded Happy Hour, he's actually I'm just the judge, I guess. I thought I was going to be off camera for the spelling bee, but apparently I'm not. So I thought I was going to have less work to do, but no, it's more work for me. So Danny's the host of the drunk spelling bee, but him and I host the Thursday Happy Hour show, where we have a bunch of bartenders on. Beej, who's in the chat, might be hosting next Thursday. So yeah, we just make a bunch of drinks, and I used to not know shit about cocktails, and now I can make most things. I used to just like Jameson and ginger ale, and that was a nice cocktail for me.
What's the recipe for that?
It's Jameson and ginger ale.
All right.
You really are an expert now.
Yeah.
You weren't kidding.
You really come a long way.
Do you find that you have to drink more now to be around yourself in the way that you described earlier?
It's surprise. It's people are seem to be surprised because they see my posts are a lot more drink centric, but I'm probably drinking way less than I certainly was when I was at comedy shows. I'd be at Faded and I'm having 7, 8 goddamn White Claws by the end of the night, and 4 or 5 goddamn mixed drinks of the goddamn Rattlesnake at the end of the night. So now it's like, yeah, will I fucking mix myself a drink at 3? Yeah, but it'll be one of 3 drinks I have before I go to bed, and it's it's not that bad.
Yeah, certainly you're drinking a lot less than you were before you were snorkeling off the Florida Keys and found 60 pounds of cocaine under the water, as one does. Mike Mulloy is with the I'm going to put your banner back up here too to make it easier. The Faded Comedy LA. Go to fadedcomedy.com to check all that stuff out. The Drunk Spelling Bee is next weekend.
March 20th.
March 20th. That's
Yep.
2 weekends. So mark your calendars for that. We'll tweet that out when it gets a little bit closer. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This is fun.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
We will talk to you soon. And again, congratulations on your imminent release. Stay out of trouble for at least like a week or so. Take care, man.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
You. Yeah, you too. Cool. There you go.
Yeah. So before we go, this happened, yes. Andy. Some NBA news that, because the Lakers, there are some Lakers fans who were interested in the concept of Blake Griffin joining the Lakers. I wonder how useful he might have been. Now people are talking a little bit more about Andre Drummond. This from Mark Stein from the New York Times, former colleague of ours at ESPN. There's optimism within the Lakers that they will get strong consideration from Andre Drummond if Drummond ultimately leaves the Cavaliers via buyout, league sources say. Cleveland's preference, of course, remains trading Drummond elsewhere before the March 25th deadline. There are a lot of qualifiers in this, Andy. Yeah. There is optimism. Optimism is a sort of a shaky word. It will get strong consideration. That is also a shaky kind of construction. That if Drummond ultimately leaves the Cavaliers via buyout, like there's a lot going on in that sentence. But I'll ask you this one. Does Andre Drummond solve what people think at least is wrong with the Lakers?
He doesn't solve everything, but he addresses some areas. Like if you are concerned at all about rim protection, he's better at that than what they currently than Marc Gasol or Montrezl Harrell as a
better than Harrell for sure.
Yeah, I think
he's still not very. But as a defender, rim. I guarantee you, Gasol's rim protection numbers. If you're not concerned about shot blocking, are better than Drummond's.
I would say it depends on the type of rim protection that you are looking for. If you're looking for just more actual size for this team, he could address some areas. I don't think he addresses the biggest problem areas for this team, which I think exist along the wing and along the perimeter. I also wonder where he's going to play and how much, and whether this is actually the best opportunity for Andre Drummond in terms of what I assume he wants to be looking for on the court, unless you're going to be really cutting down the minutes for either Gasol or Harrell. I don't know where he's going to play, especially when you take into account how much 5 ultimately Anthony Davis is going to play. And I don't picture the Lakers doing something in the second half where they start trying to find different ways to play Drummond and AD together, having had no experience as teammates. That seems like a lot, especially to implement for what's going to be a really hectic second half of the season.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, here's my thinking about
he could be handy. He could be handy to have. I actually question, though, to be honest, if this is actually the best opportunity for Andre Drummond. But
here's the thing that I think most people assume, right, that he would be a prime candidate to end up on Brooklyn. He still could. There's no reason necessarily he couldn't end up on the Nets just because they signed Blake Griffin. I never know what to think about this sort of thing because on the one hand, Andre Drummond's good. He's not as good maybe as his contractor. He's flawed because he's not a great defender or whatever it might be. But the dude can, pull down rebounds.
Yeah.
He's a great rebounder, and he is a, 15, 16, 17, 18 point a game scorer.
He's currently averaging 17 and a half, 13 and a
13
half.
and a half. Like, you're good if you can do that, and a block a game and a steal and a half a game and all that kind of stuff. He's too good to say Andre Drummond doesn't help him. But I don't know if it's a failure of imagination or what it might be. I'm having trouble figuring out what Andre Drummond looks like with Anthony Davis and with LeBron James, particularly late in games.
Well, I mean, the whole late game thing, I don't worry about in terms of from the Lakers' perspective. It might be a consideration for Drummond, which is, again, when I say I'm not sure this is the best opportunity for him, that's one of the things I'm talking about. But I consider that much more of an Andre Drummond problem than a Lakers problem. I just wonder how it actually works without really reconfiguring the rotation. Like, were I to guess, it would really indicate that Vogel is just unhappy with Montrezl Harrell.
Yeah, and what's the problem with what you're saying too is that, Cleveland is expected to kind of run out the clock on this thing. Like, they're not going to buy him out until they have exhausted every single trade opportunity, it seems like, which means that pushes you to the end of March. And then you get April, May, like some of the things that you're concerned about. How do you integrate those things become more acute if you can't start now?
Yeah.
You can't start now anyway, because Anthony Davis isn't in the lineup.
I mean, look, he's a hard guy to turn down if you really have the opportunity, because look, someone like Gasol or Harrell ends up potentially getting hurt, COVID, whatever. Then all of a sudden that issue of how do you make all that work with the rotation goes away because they're not available. I mean, Andre Drummond is a very useful player to have on your roster and can be, even if you consider it counting stats, a very good counting stats guy. And, every once in a while, empty calories are nice to have.
Is he that bad defensively? Like, that's been the thing that makes people say Andre Drummond isn't worth it, because, he's averages 17 and a half points a game and generally 14, 15 rebounds a game. But he's so bad defensively that it doesn't matter. Like,
I always think it's hard to tell.
He's always been on shitty teams.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I think a guy like Drummond can be difficult to evaluate that way, because he's always been on these teams that, they say like Andre Drummond doesn't add to winning. Maybe that's true, but generally speaking, neither of his teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like his teams would have been losing whether he was there or not. So he's a difficult guy to evaluate. But I mean, look, the Lakers might want to just get him to keep him from being on another team.
Well, if they can get him, the only way they can get him is to sign him for, the minimum and all the stuff that they have available. That's all. That's all they can do. If he's willing to come, they're not going to find a better player. If I have to choose between Andre Drummond or Trevor Ariza, who Ariza theoretically fills a need a little bit more, but hasn't played a second of basketball this year, and has been, he had a bit of a revival last year in Portland, but it wasn't like he was dominant, and he's clearly on the downside of things. I'm taking Andre Drummond. I'm not even thinking about it. He's a much better player. That's me.
No, I agree with you. I would say Andre Drummond is somebody that they can get. I just don't exactly know how he fits into all this. But as long as you're upfront with the guy about the potential complications of having him on the roster, exactly what his role is going to be, how much he is going to play, how much he's not going to play, if he's down with it, it's worth giving an opportunity. It's worth giving it a go.
I will say my biggest concern here might be that and Anthony Davis's rebounding has already been very disappointing this year from a fantasy standpoint. You put Andre Drummond on this team, it's going to fucking tank my squad.
Okay, now we understand exactly where your reluctance was coming from.
Look, finally, it's a pandemic. It's been rough on us economically, Andy.
That is true.
There's an imperative on you. Look at you all cushy, Mr. I won my fantasy football league for the first time ever. Now you're acting like it doesn't matter. Like, we've reached a point in our lives this year, thanks to 2020. Where it actually kind of makes a difference if I finish first, second, third, or fifth. Like, the kid's got to eat. So, yes, keep Andre Drummond away from the Lakers. That's all I'm saying. Or let Anthony Davis have his rebounds. Don't be hoggy.
Well, we'll see how it goes. We'll see what type of team player he is. But ultimately, again, if they can get him, they would be pretty foolish not to.
Yeah, I agree. All right, coming up tomorrow, this is actually going to be a really cool edition of the Late Night Happy Hour. We're going to speak to Robert Vargas. He's a muralist who just put up a really cool Kobe mural on the west side of LA on the Zambezi building in I think it's in Santa Monica. Correct?
Yes.
But he's done stuff all over the city. You know, he did an Eddie Van Halen mural at Guitar Center in Hollywood, just all kinds of really cool stuff. And so we're going to learn a lot about what goes into doing this. I'm really excited about talking to him tomorrow. Wednesday, the Lauer After Hours, Lauer After Dark guys, we're going to have 10 people on this screen, I think.
Why not?
I think why not? We're going Deco box.
Let's do it, man.
At the very least, it's going to be an Octo box, but we're going to box the fuck out of this thing on Wednesday. Thursday, 9:00. We're going to go an hour earlier to accommodate our good friend Michael Lee, who's joining us from the East Coast. Great basketball writer, all around awesome guy. And then the Jordan Liggins and Haley O'Shaughnessy are going to join us on Friday.
Yeah,
so
it's a good week. It's going to be
the
fun,
Spencer's podcast, and so they just launched that, and it's really good. And so a great week of guests coming up, and we will see you tomorrow again. Muralist Robert Vargas. If you have any questions that you want to ask him, we'll put that out because I'm excited to learn about like what goes into all this stuff. So it should be fun.
Danke, Niederland.